Hi everyone, welcome to I Love Reading's fourth Facebook Live. So I'm Kelly from I Love Reading, and today we have three special guest speakers with us. And so we have them today on our live show, not just because they're from I Love Reading, but also because they're parents. So today we'll be talking about how you parents can support your child during exam season. And our speakers here today with us are Nixon, Soba, and Nora. And they'll be sharing more about their different parenting styles and how they support their children during exam season. So we'll be starting in a bit. Let's give the others some time to log in and to join us. And in the meantime, please like and share. So share with your friends and family, with anyone you know who has kids, because today we'll be covering quite an interesting topic, and we hope many of you will find it helpful. Yeah, and also be sure to listen closely, because there will be many chances to win prizes throughout today's session. Yeah, so please like and share while we wait for more people to join us. And to all the parents joining us from home, you can also type in the comments if you have anything to share. So just let us know if you have any questions, because today we have our three speakers with us, and then they can let you know what they think. Yeah, so feel free to type in the comments now or anytime during the session today. So while we wait for more people to join us, I can just ask some questions so we can all know more about our speakers today. So Soba, how many children do you have and how old are they?
Okay, I have three children. They're all boys. So a mini football team, right? So they're actually 17, 15, and 12. With the youngest sitting for PSLE this year. Yeah.
Wow, PSLE this year. And then
Yes.
your second son has his O-levels coming up next year?
Yeah, next year. And the eldest will be doing his IB next year. So
Wow.
next year will be another important, crucial year, I guess.
Oh, so must be pretty
Stress
stressful
at
for
bay, right?
you.
Stress at bay.
Yeah, so to those watching from home, you can also type in the comments to let us know how old your children are too. Yeah, so how about you, Nixon?
I have three girls, 6 years old, 16 and 18 years old.
So your second daughter, 16 years old, she'll be having her O-levels this year, right?
Yes, that's right.
Wow, so how is she coping with the stress?
So far, I think she's pretty all right. I've seen her putting in efforts, so should be all right.
That's nice.
Yeah.
How about you, Nora?
I have an 18-year-old daughter who's currently preparing for her A-levels.
Okay. Yeah, so for all the viewers at home, as you all can see, our three speakers here have been through the stages of their kids going through big exams. So PSLE, O-levels, A-levels. Yeah, and in fact, among our speakers today, yeah, so as you have heard just now, some of them are going through PSLE, O-levels, and even A-levels this year. So hey, to everyone watching from home, now you know that our speakers here are actually really experienced with exam season. Yeah, so I'm sure they have lots of advice to give. Yeah. Yeah, so everyone here, how did you and your kids spend the June holidays? Yeah, so for viewers at home, you can just type in the chat. And then how about you, Nixon? How did your kids spend the June holidays?
In fact, for this time around, it's nothing much because of the restriction. We all are mostly at home.
Yeah, such a shame.
No choice.
How about you, Shobha? I think previously you mentioned that your boys went on staycation with you during the previous Facebook Live.
Oh, yeah. But we were cooped up at home mostly, but we managed to get a short staycation. So I think the boys really actually enjoyed that very much. So I think because of the COVID time. So I mean, they couldn't go anywhere else, right? So I think it was really a good getaway, especially for them. Yeah, they did nothing, just in their rooms, eat and watch TV and binge,
Sounds fun. How about you, Nora?
My daughter was preparing for her mid-year exams because in junior college, the mid-year exams are after the holidays. So that took up a lot of her time, yeah. But we did get to go out just to walk around in the malls where it permitted. But other than that, we are basically cooped up at home too.
Yeah, I understand, COVID issues, right? I also couldn't really go anywhere. Yeah, so we'll be starting soon. So for everyone at home, just like and share. Let your friends know about this, that your cousins. Yeah, so if any of you know people who have children, just let them know, like and share so that they can join our live today. They can learn something interesting because as I mentioned, we'll be going through something interesting today where our speakers today will share more about how to support your child during exam season. Yeah, so this will be very helpful. Yeah, so please like and share, let more people know about this live. People who have children, just let them know, like and share so that they can join our live today. They can learn something interesting because as I mentioned, we'll be going through something interesting today where people who have children, just let them know, like and share so that they can join our live today. They can learn something Oh, sorry for the pause. There was some technical error. So, okay, I think most of us are here. So we're quite ready to start. And yeah, again, hi everyone. Welcome to I Love Reading's fourth Facebook Live. I'm Kelly from I Love Reading, and I'll be your host for today. So as I mentioned just now, today we'll be covering a topic that I'm sure many of you are interested in. So how to support your child during exam season. And we have three special guest speakers with us here today, and they'll be sharing more about their different parenting styles and how they support their children during exam season. Firstly, with Nixon. Nixon is the founder of I Love Reading, and he has three girls aged 6, 16, and 18. He
Hello,
describes himself.
everyone.
Hi, Nixon. So
Hi.
he describes himself as a chillax father. While he worries over their academics occasionally, he still prefers to let his girls pursue the paths that they choose for themselves. And next, we have Soba.
Hello.
Hi, Soba. I'm
Hi.
sure, Soba should be a familiar face by now, right? Because she was here in our previous live. But for those of you who missed the previous live, you can watch it again on our Facebook page. So to recap, Soba is I Love Reading's in-house chief editor, and she has three boys aged 12, 15, and 17. She's a former English HOD and has taught for more than 10 years. Last but not least, we have Nora. Nora
Hi,
is our
everyone.
I Love Reading writer. Yeah, hi Nora. So she's a writer at I Love Reading, and she's an educator with a master's in education in English language. She also has an 18-year-old daughter who is currently preparing for the A-levels. Yeah, so today is actually our first time having Nixon and Nora on our live show. And hopefully we'll be able to see more of them in our next few live shows. Yeah, so thanks. Yeah, thanks to all our speakers today. And to our viewers again, just another reminder to listen closely because today there will be some chances to win prizes throughout the session. And of course, if you have any questions, just type them out in the comments and then we can get our panel of speakers to respond to them. Yeah, so now that we all have quite a clear idea of what today's live is going to be about and who our guest speakers are, I'd like to start off with reviewing the responses from our first social media poll. So if you recall, we actually held polls on our social media channels, and we asked all of you to indicate whether you're a kanjiong or a chillax parent. So I'm sure we're quite curious about the results. So are there more kanjiong parents or more chillax parents among us who participated in the poll? So to all our viewers here, just type your guess in the chat. The first person who gets the correct guess will win an exciting prize. So here's the question again. According to the poll we held, do you think there are more kanjiong parents or more chillax parents overall? Yep, so while you guys are typing your guesses in the chat, I'll just get our guests to share more about themselves. So let's start with Nixon. Nixon, I understand you're more of a chillax parent, right? Is that true?
Yes, I'm leaning towards a chillax attitude when dealing with my kids' academic success.
How about you, Shobha? What kind of parenting style would you say you follow?
I think I like to think that I'm in the middle road. I take the middle road. I'm moderate parent. On sometimes I lean more towards one extreme or the other, depending on the child and the situation. Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Nora?
I would like to believe that my parenting style sits somewhere between kanjiong and chillax. It depends very much on the issues on hand that require my attention because I believe in choosing my battles wisely so that we can all win the war.
Yeah, I see. So your approach here. So your approach is more similar to Shobha's, right?
Yes, it is.
So for all the parents at home, as you all can see, among our guests here today, we have two who say they're somewhere in between kanjiong and chillax. Yeah, and then we have one chillax parent. So let's see whether the results you got from our social media posts were similar. Yeah, so we actually have more chillax parents than kanjiong parents in the poll. Yeah, so congratulations to the winner. My team member will reach out to you to the comments. So yeah, just keep an eye out for that in the comments. Yeah, and so I guess the results of our poll today are quite similar to the distribution that we have, with kanjiong parents forming the minority among our speakers today. And feel free to type in the comments if there's anything you want to share. And if you have any questions, yeah, just feel free to type that in the chat too, because our guest speakers are here today to answer your questions. And moving on to build on the first question I asked just now, Nixon, you mentioned just now that you're more of a chillax parent, right? So can you elaborate a bit more? Like, to what extent do you participate in your children's academics and why?
Thank you, Kelly. When I was first trying to coach my number one daughter, her name is Shannon, during primary 2 or primary 3, but now she's about 18 years old in Temasek Poly year 1. So I tried many ways myself, and I had fights with my spouse over her academic success. And as a typical parent of a first child, we send her to almost every possible enrichment class that we can find. So at a very young age of 5 to 6 years old, she's doing something like 4 enrichment classes per week. So apart from the daily school, so to some extent, we noticed that she was feeling very stressed and had nightmares. So, and she's looking very tired. And the worst of all, no time to play. So we have decided that we should then cut this down to reduce all this stress for her. Yeah. So as time goes on, we have our number 2. Then we also realize that, hey, without any much pushing, she's doing fairly all right. So in that's the case, then why should we then just push so hard for the number 1? So then, therefore, we prefer to not to create any more nightmares among themselves and let them enjoy their primary school and secondary school years.
I see. So for you, you started out more as a kanchong parent, but then you developed a more relaxed parenting style, right? Based on your experience with your first child.
Yep.
What about you, Soba?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I actually lean towards one of the extreme, depending on my child. So for example, my first child, he has been quite self-disciplined and independent from at least at the age of 11. And so I therefore do not need to supervise him so much. And slowly I just leave him be. And I think that has worked out well for him. He's doing quite well now with being in IB year 1. And he continues to be focused and disciplined. However, with my younger 2, it's a different story. It's amazing how 3 kids can be totally different. Seriously, I'm sure Nixon, you can understand as well, right? And Nora, when we teach the kids, they can be so different. So my younger 2, they lack self-discipline. I wouldn't say lack, but I guess they could do with more self-discipline. And so therefore I probably will have to usually rather spend more time with them, supervising them and hand holding them. Having said that, as they get older and depending on the level of maturity, I will loosen the grip as it goes along and as they develop, because I do think that's finally at the end of the day, it's important for them to be independent, learners.
Thanks for sharing, Soba. Yeah, so I can see why this would depend on the child, right? Since not all children have the same amount of self-discipline and some may require more guidance than others. How about you, Nora?
When my daughter was younger, specifically when she was preparing for her PSLE and the O levels, I was very much involved in her academic journey because of her age. I feel that teens, pre-teens, they need more guidance, especially in areas such as time as well as stress management. I think the lack of ability, or they don't quite know how to regulate their time. So I think that's where we parents may want to come in a little bit more and give them the support and the guidance. I also feel that teens and preteens, they appreciate explicit support. So being physically present when they are studying, it can be as simple as sometimes I sit at the dining table where she does her work. There's no conversation because everybody's doing their work, but to just be physically there. And sometimes we make small talk. Sometimes the need to answer, being on hand to answer her queries. I think all these are very important for her. I have become less involved when she entered junior college because I realized that it's time for her to take ownership of her own decisions, particularly since she's now a young adult. I can't be always there to help her along. So it's time to let go. And I'm happy to say that this seems to be working well for now.
Thanks for sharing. So it seems like how much parents participate in their children's academics is affected by many different factors. So it can vary very much depending on the age and the personalities of the children. Yeah, so far, all our speakers have shared a lot about themselves. And I'm still quite curious though. So can you all share more about the different types of parents you've seen and maybe any interesting stories about them? Yeah, Shoba, it would be great if you could go first.
Yeah. So I think there are always parents at either extremes, but many parents seem to be more on the kanchong side, although they would love to be chillax actually. But somehow they end up being kanchong with all the pressures around them, I think, and also the education system here and everything. So especially I think at the PSLE stage, I think parents do stress quite a fair bit, as well as to the children. And I think this can be mentally disturbing for both the child and especially also for the parent. So I think we all are quite guilty of that actually as parents. I don't think I can proclaim, oh, I've never been stressed. I would never say that. I've been there actually. And so but I think we have to keep reminding ourselves that life is not a race but a journey. And I think we just have to manage our expectations, and so that we can help and tell ourselves that the mental health well-being of our child is the most important thing, and also ours.
Yeah, I've definitely seen parents who get very stressed about their children's PSLE. So for our viewers at home, just feel free to type in the chat if you have any stories to share about PSLE, or if you have any questions that you want our speakers to answer for you. Yeah, so while you guys are typing in the comments, Nora, how about you?
I have interacted with parents who operate at either end of the spectrum, so being terribly kanchong or terribly chillax. And then, of course, there are those who take the middle ground. I must say that I think in our society, more tend to lean towards being kanchong simply because education features quite significantly, both in the lives of the parents as well as their children. So an interesting story, I know of parents who were on leave when their children were actually preparing for the national exams, particularly for the PSLE and the O levels. And then they were also again on leave during the examination period itself. So it did make me wonder who was sitting for the exam, the parent or the child. But having said that, I can understand why such a step is taken, because I think physical presence can translate to strong support. So it could be something as simple as sending the child to school when the child is going to sit for the exam, picking the child back after the exam, getting lunch. So the physical presence there, and it may be very much appreciated by the child. And I guess it's also very much like attending a sporting event as a spectator. So you support one's favorite team, and in this case, it will be your children.
Well, I've never heard of parents taking leave to support their children during exams. Like my parents never did that for me. Yeah, so
I didn't mind.
yeah.
Neither did mine.
We're a different generation, though. I mean,
Yep, true.
Yeah, I guess that really goes to show how far parents can go to support their children. How about you, Nixon?
Well, I really have some friends who took leave to support their child during the exam periods. Yeah. I also have some friends that coach their kids. For me, I can only give moral support. Sometimes I volunteer to make some snacks or buy some snacks for them. I just want to remind all our friends out there, please support and give comments all the time, whether your child did poorly, averagely, or outstandingly. Don't ever compare your child with anyone else.
Thanks, Nixon, for the advice. Yeah, I say it's definitely quite important to have a positive attitude towards your kids. A little encouragement from parents can really make a difference. So to get to the core of our session today, let's talk about exams. Yesterday, we asked all of you on Instagram to share a word or emoji to describe your feelings during exam season. So we looked through the responses, and it seems like most parents get super stressed when exams are around the corner. Yeah, so we got quite a few people saying that they were stressed. And to our viewers at home, let us know in the chat how you feel when exam season is around the corner. Let's see if our guests here feel the same. So Nora, what do you feel when your kids' exams are coming up soon?
I feel very anxious and I get insomnia.
Yeah, I understand, because that's how I feel when I have exams coming up too. How about you, Nixon?
Well, I'll be in a chillax mode, frankly, because exam to me is a process of testing my understanding. If I do well, that means I'm able to understand the subject very well. If I don't, at most I fail, and I will analyze my errors and improve myself for the next test or exam. So I must be able to accept my failures, because failures is not the end of everything. It is about learning curve, and I should come back stronger and tougher the next round.
Thanks for sharing. How about you, Soba?
Yeah, I would love to be like you, man, Jackson. So chillax. I'm trying. I'm getting there. But I mean, to be honest, I mean, the anxiety is of course there, especially so when the child does not demonstrate the attitude, to improve himself, or the child does not seem to want to do better. So, however, at the end of the day, I always tell myself that it's important for the child to go through certain experiences, for the child to experience his or her own victories and failures, and to be resilient and to understand and learn and improve. So we can say we can do a lot of things, but ultimately it is their journey, and we have to let that be. Yeah.
Okay, so now we know how Nixon, Shoba, and Nora feel when their kids' exams are around the corner. But I'm still wondering, how have your attitudes towards big exams like the O levels changed over time? So yeah, Shoba, would you like to share?
Um, I think I when I was taking the O levels, I think I took it a lot more seriously. Or rather, I mean, we should still take it seriously. Pardon me, but what I meant was, I think there's more stress. But I think today I feel that there's so many more pathways than there were in my time. And I think what we have to focus on, and what I focus on for my kids, is really what are their strengths and what are their passions. And this has been something that has been on my mind ever since they're born, actually. I mean, so I constantly look out for what they are good at and what their skills are. So I think once we identify that, I think the child will do well in that way. So, for example, my oldest child, he was good in language from young, and academically he was quite strong. Whereas my youngest one, for example, he's very good in sports. So that is his strength. So I like to help him develop that, and and go in that pathway instead of focusing too much on the academics alone. So I think that's something that I find that we should do for our child. It could be sports, music, or even a skill that has not even been talked about yet, nowadays with all this digital future and what have you. So I think importantly, let's know our child. Yeah,
Mm.
that's important. Yeah.
That's true. I think as unique individuals, we all have our different strengths. Yeah,
Yeah.
so to all the parents watching our live, I'm sure there are some things that your kids are passionate about besides studying. So feel free to share it in the comments. Yeah, next, Nixon, how about you? How has your attitude changed towards exams over time?
Well, I see it as a process of learning, and you are graded based on your attempt. I don't put too much emphasis on grades. However, I am very concerned about character building, such as values, morals, integrity, which I kept highlighting to all my kids, such as you can fail, but you don't copy to get good grades. Once you copy, you become not trustworthy, and there's no integrity. And you will find shortcuts in life to achieve success in a shorter way, but you have a lack of a foundation.
Okay, thanks for sharing. How about you, Nora?
I have only one child, so I would not be able to comment on this from the perspective of a parent. However, as an educator, I would say that the changes to the educational landscape over time are very much welcomed. There are multiple pathways available to students to cater to their learning needs, excuse me, and aptitude provide ample opportunities for self-discovery, growth, and development. So as such, while the national exams are important, I feel that they must be viewed through a very different lens today than before. That is, they are no longer just a results generating system or mechanism, but they also are gateways to lifelong learning.
Okay, so all three of our speakers here have something in common where they feel that although exams are important, your grades aren't the only thing that's important. Yeah,
Yes.
and there are also many
Yeah.
other pathways that one can take in life. So it's not the end of the world if your grades aren't the best. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
certainly. Like Kelly, like what you just said. I mean, I think earlier you said about being like every one of us is unique, right? So
yeah,
I think that is really a point that I cannot state more. Really, it's very important for us to really internalize this and not just say, yeah, for our children especially. Yeah.
thanks for sharing, Shobha. So now we're going to talk about something more relatable to everyone here, stress. So my first question about stress is, what do you think are the main sources of stress for children and parents when it comes to exams? Viewers, you can let us know in the comments. And of course, if you have any questions, you can type them in the comments too. So Nixon, why don't you share first?
Well, I guess high expectations from parents are very common. I have friends insisted that if they have kids, they must send their kids to a very specific school. You see? Parents are very common. So I thought that, what on earth you are? You must be some friends from alien or coming from nowhere and insisted such a strong stand from there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I see quite often around me too. Shobha, what do you think?
Yeah, I think expectations are really one of the things, like what Nixon said. I do agree with that. And perhaps together with that, I think it's also about comparisons, comparisons with peers. So it could be the children comparing their results with their classmates, or it could be the parents comparing the results, with the others. So with the, like, when the child comes back and he tells you the mark and you go like, oh, okay, that's good. But how about the others? What did they get? What was the average? How about the one next to you? How about the one behind you? You know what I mean? So, I mean, there seems to be this natural, feel that, oh, how good is my child? How competitive is he? So, I guess we cannot deny the fact that we do live in a competitive world. I do not blame parents who actually do this, and even I have been guilty of it a few times as well. So, but I think we have to constantly remind ourselves that such comparisons rob the joy the child may have brought back, and it introduces stress, unnecessary stress, and it can affect them mentally. So we have to constantly remind ourselves that every child is unique, like I said, and it's best that we as parents recognize this early.
Yeah, I think making comparisons is definitely something that can get pretty stressful for both children and parents.
Yeah, even as adults, right? When we make comparisons, I think we actually lose the joy.
Yeah, I understand. What do you think, Nora?
I think expectations, both that of the parents as well as the children themselves. And this gets a lot worse when the expectations are unrealistic. Yeah. And of course, peer pressure. Yeah, the comparison, so and so got this mark, but I didn't. And last time we were in the same boat. Now he's ahead of me. Why? Yeah. So I think it's very stressful.
No, why? Why not? Why not? Hey, why not?
Yeah. So they don't, and again, like what I said earlier, their inability to regulate the stress management, right? It's not quite there yet. So I think it's important for us to be aware of this and to help them along.
Okay, so I see that our speakers here have similar views, where high expectations, constant comparison with others, and also peer pressure. These can all cause lots of stress to both children and parents. So I guess these are all pretty hard to avoid, but they should just be done in moderation. Yeah, and then in the same vein, do you have any expectations of your children and how they should perform in exams? And then if so, how do you manage your expectations? So to the parents joining us from home, feel free to share your experiences in the comments. And then you can let us know in the comments too if you have any questions. So I'll direct this question to Nora first.
I think it is only natural for a parent to have expectations of his or her children. I don't think it's also right for us to swing up to the other extreme and say, oh, no, you can do whatever you want. I have no expectations of you. But I think what is more important to me is whether the expectations are realistic. So in deciding this, the critical thing is you must know your child very well. So for one, I know that my daughter does not have the aptitude for certain subjects. So I adjust my expectations accordingly when analyzing her performance in any exam. I also give credit to the effort that is put in during the examination period because they tend to be at home, right? Most of the time, especially now. So you can actually see how much effort they put in. So if she has not worked as hard as she should, then I think it will not be to anybody's best interest to expect such sterling grades. So two things, it's okay to have expectations, provided they're realistic, and then you adjust it accordingly based on what you see and you know of your kid.
Okay. So Nixon, would you like to go next?
For me, I don't have much expectations. I would like my child to shape their own future. Sometimes the higher expectation you have, the unexpected result you get. Yeah. So I rather sit down with them, talk about goal settings, give them some options to consider. Once they have identified their options, we help them to work towards their goal.
Yeah, so we can see here that Nixon is a really chillax parent who doesn't pressure his children.
Yeah.
Soba,
just
how
to
about
echo
you?
the point about the realistic expectation, what Nora has just mentioned, that is something that we really must manage.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So Soba,
Nixon
how about
says that,
you?
yeah, I'm coming to it. So Nixon says that, if you have no expectations, then you won't be disappointed and you save yourself the heartache, right?
Yeah.
I love that, but I'm not die yet. But so I think for me, yeah, sorry, Nixon.
The Zen mode for parents, we'll never get there.
I know, right? but not like this father has.
Yeah, because my number one, Shannon, we once DSA her into a school, and guess what? She has not met her minimum standard to enter the school. So then what do? Do we then scold her? Of course we don't, right? We have to find a way to give her more moral support, say that this is not the end of the world, cool, be chill, look forward to your new option and start something new.
Yeah.
True enough, she has blossomed. She did a 5 years program with another secondary school and she's now happily in year 1 Temasek Poly.
Yes, awesome. Yes, she
Yeah.
did very well for O levels. I know that. Yes,
Mhm.
wonderful actually. Yeah, and I think yeah, you're right. And for me, I think it depends on the child, of course. For a child who shows a strong, let's say, academic inclination, my expectation will certainly be higher, right? So if the child is not really performing, then I know that it's something to do with the attitude, So then that's not going to be accepted for me. And if the child is, however, not academically inclined, then my expectations will be more calibrated, and I'll focus more on the improvements that the child will be making. And but in both cases, I feel attitude comes first, aptitude only second. Mm, yeah.
Okay, so as we discussed just now, high expectations can cause lots of stress to both children and parents. And yeah, our speakers have just shared how they manage their expectations. So on the same topic of stress, we also conducted another poll on our social media a few days ago. And the question we asked was, should parents put pressure on their child for exams? And most of you parents voted for no. So most parents on our social media feel that parents should not put pressure on their child for exams. So what do you all think? Viewers, you can type your opinions in the chat, and I'm sure we're all curious to see whether the results will be the same for those watching our live show today. So what do you think about this, Soba?
There's no blanket answer to this actually for me. Um, I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but actually it really depends on the child. So you see, if your child is someone who does not take exams seriously or is rather playful, then there needs to be some level of pressure, right? So because as we know, only under pressure carbon becomes diamond, and I think that sort of pressure will drive them or help them achieve. However, overdrive is not good, right? So we all know that. So if the child is already stressed about exams or your child is anxious by nature, then we need to take a step back and instead, tell the child take it easy. So I would say know your child first. I think that is key for me.
Thanks for sharing, Soba. So Nora, what do you think?
Yes and no. Again, it depends very much on the child's character. So I agree with what Shobha has said and elaborated on earlier.
Okay, so it depends on the child. Yeah, how about you, Nixon?
To me, it's no. I think that each child is different and their learning ability differs. We should then identify their strengths and their weaknesses, work towards both, and find out how the child should be and give them the opportunity to be nurtured accordingly.
I see. So ultimately, I think our three speakers here agree that parents should not excessively pressure their kids. And then how much we pressure them should depend on their personalities. And more than that, we should also be aware of their strengths and their weaknesses and then help them grow from there. So next, I'm going to share something that I thought was interesting. So we had another poll on our social media where we asked you to vote for who is more stressed during exam season, you parents or your children. So a large majority of you guys actually voted for yourselves. So I guess we can tell from this poll that parents can get really stressed out during exam season. Yeah, to address this, my next question to you all is, so how do you manage the exam stress that you face as a parent when your kids are having exams? So viewers at home, you can share your tips in the comments on how you manage the exam stress that you experience as a parent. And then my team on the back end will pick the most interesting and the most helpful tip. So you'll win a prize. Yeah, and then while you guys are typing in the chat, I'll direct this question to the speakers. So Nora, how do you manage the exam stress that you face as a parent?
I keep to a routine. I find this very helpful, especially during the exam period. It gives a sense of comfort as well as normalcy.
Yeah.
How about you, Soba?
I would agree with Nora. Actually, I think I will just go about my routines, not think too much about it because there's no point thinking about it. And I also try to keep a positive attitude, so there's positive vibe in the house, and so I can also put my kid up when he comes back from the exams, regardless of how he may have felt that he had done in the exam itself.
How about you, Nixon?
I don't feel stressed at all because I'm not the one taking the exam.
Oh, of course, Mr. Chillax.
Yeah, but just to add on, I don't want to remind my kids that they are going for an exam to just get good grades. And after the exam, they forgot about what they learned and they are tested for. I want them to really focus on the learning process and take exam as a mini test to reflect their understanding so that they don't feel too stressed, which learning isn't all about A1s. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So Nixon, your experience is quite different from Nora and Shoba's. Like exam period is mostly stress-free for you. Oh, I'm looking at the comments on the chat, and it seems like Iris said that some pressure is required. My son is too chillax. Yeah, do our speakers here have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, right? I mean, as I said, right, if your child is taking things too easy rather. I mean, I don't know if that is a good thing, because I think in life we need to have some drive, and we need to have some focus and some determination. So those characters will only come with a little bit of stress.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that stress, there's always healthy stress and unhealthy stress. So I think healthy stress is good. It does not matter how well you do it, but whether you are putting in your best effort. How's your attitude? Like I said before, not so much about your aptitude, whether you're good at it, but attitude. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Soba.
Yeah.
Can I add on to the point?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe for the parent who has this concern, you may want to sit down with the child and start to have a conversation, probe more and ask why you feel more chillax. Does it mean that you know the topic very well, that's why you are so confident, so chillax? Or what is the other reason you feel so chillax? So perhaps more communication will find out more answers from there.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking at the comments on Facebook, and it seems that we have a tip from Sharon Yo on how to distress. So she has an ice cream treat to distress at the end of the day.
I second that.
Cool,
that
it,
sounds
right?
great.
Literally chill.
Yeah, so moving on, Nixon, just now you mentioned that you try to remind your kids to focus on the learning process so that they don't feel too stressed about the results.
Yes.
Yeah, so how else do you support your children?
I give them moral, mental, and physical support. Always be with them and hear them out. I think that's very important.
Okay, so Nora, how do you support your daughter?
My daughter and I, we communicate quite a lot throughout the day. So I feel that this is important. It shows her that no matter how busy I am, I will always have time for her to either reply to her texts or return her calls, or even like the posts that she shares with me. I would like to believe that I am her go-to person for many things.
Yeah, I'm sure your daughter really appreciates how you're always there for her. And I think that there's nothing more reassuring than knowing that your parents will always be there to support you. Shoba, how do you support your children?
Yeah, I agree with Nora. Actually, communication is key. I think in my relationship with the children, communication has proven to be the one which wins in the end. So in terms of support, I focus a lot on emotional support. So like I always try to look out for any signs of anxiety or even stress, distress sometimes, right? So for example, I make it a point, to talk to my children after they're back from school, just to find out how their day was and whether they are facing any challenges in school. And so I think that really helps, because it helps them to know that there's someone they can reach out to, and they do. So I think that works for now.
Thanks, Shoba. So to summarize, all three of our speakers believe that it's quite important to communicate with their children so that their kids will know that they'll always be there for them. Yeah, so we just went through how our speakers support their children, but now on the flip side, I want to ask, what kinds of parenting advice have you guys heard of and tried but did not work? So to the parents at home, you can type your stories in the comments, and then I can get our speakers to share what they think. And then the most interesting story can win a prize too. Yeah, so in the meantime, Nora, would you like to go first?
I know of parents who micromanage their children's lives. I tried that once when she was a teen, specifically during her secondary school years. It totally bombed in my face. So my approach now would be that to have her understand that she must own her decisions. And while I believe in the value of providing strong support, I don't believe in breathing down her neck 24/7. I think it can be terribly suffocating, especially as she's trying to find her own identity, to seek or to know exactly what she is all about. Yeah, it's a delicate balance, I must say, but it is one that is worth working on, and it's definitely something we must strike.
Yeah, I agree that it's good to strike a balance always. Yeah, how about you, Shoba?
I think I've heard of, parents who actually say that you need to have tuition for every subject, even if the child is doing quite well. So I think this stems from a sense of insecurity, right? Because you see, oh, so and so has tuition for this and English and maths and chemistry, and my child doesn't have. I think he needs to go for it. So I think I'm not sure if this is the best thing to do for the child, because I think the child becomes over reliant, and it also kind of shakes his or her own self-confidence and self-esteem, right? So I think the child needs to have a chance to build his confidence or her confidence. So any tuition, if necessary, must have a true purpose and focus, and the child needs to know that as well. Yeah, not so random. and not just to feel a sense of insecurity. Yeah.
Okay, so you believe that tuition should serve a purpose and it's not going to be very helpful for a child to just go for tuition for the sake of it, right?
Not mindlessly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So how about you, Nixon?
For me, not so much of parenting kids, but it is the old way of teaching math. It simply does not work anymore. I remember coaching Shannon and end up she has even more errors. So I gave up. I immediately looked for other options to fill in the gap to support her. So those old school of thought is totally not working. Parents, don't assume that you are once upon a time can do so well, but because of the gap and syllabus do change, and then yep.
Yeah, for maths now they have like the model method, right?
Yeah,
So I'm quite an
exactly.
expert at it now. So
Yes.
yeah. So I think that's a difference certainly.
Yeah, I think the education system can have quite drastic changes over time. Yeah, so I think it's good for parents to keep up with the changes instead of stubbornly sticking to the old ways that things are done. Yeah, so to those people in watching us from home, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat again, and then our speakers can address them. Or if you have any stories to share, that's fine too. Just share in the chat. So while we're still on the topic of parenting advice, a few parents actually wrote in to us, and then they said that they wanted to hear more about intrinsic motivation. So don't worry, we'll be going through that now. But before that, I'll give a very short explanation of what intrinsic and extrinsic motivation are for those of you who aren't familiar with the terms. So to put things simply, intrinsic motivation happens when you are willing to do something because it gives you satisfaction. And then extrinsic motivation refers to behavior that is driven by external rewards. So kind of like giving your kid a prize or maybe increasing their pocket money if they do well for exams. Yeah, so now that I've explained those two terms, Nixon, what are your thoughts on using intrinsic or extrinsic motivation for your kids?
I think it is important to strike a balance. Sometimes, as much as we want our child to be self-motivated, but the fact is they are still not mature and at certain point of their life. So I'll prefer to use both so that once the goal is clear, I will have this extra perks to serve as incentives to them.
Yeah, I think when in doubt, it's always good to strike a balance. So how about you,
Yes.
Nora?
Intrinsic motivation does it for me. I feel that the child must want to study and do well of his own accord. This also ties in with owning his or her own decisions. The satisfaction of doing well and achieving what the child desires will then be truly his or hers. It can also be long lasting, this effect on them, because they know that, they've set their own goals, they own it, and then they're going to work really hard or otherwise towards it, right? Because sometimes the expectations may not be as high of themselves. I think that's fine. So as long as they're driven to work towards achieving their goals and they own it, I think that would be a whole lot better. Of course, there is extrinsic motivation it can still be useful at times, but it has limited impact, I feel, on older teens and the young adults. So whilst we can still give them gifts, awards, material rewards and praises, the impact may not necessarily last very long. The child may also go away with the idea that I want to complete certain tasks only to gain recognition, and he or she will feel very disappointed if he or she does not get that kind of recognition from others. Okay, I try not to restrict, like in the case of my daughter, she likes to dance and she's in the dance CCA. So although that has got nothing to do with academic success whatsoever, I do not restrict her where that is concerned. I let her join in the SYF, participate in dance competitions and so on and so forth, because that it will intrinsically drive her, the satisfaction to, I feel, do well academically as well. It also gives her the break, something like a stress regulator. So I've seen that work somewhat. So I'm quite keen to encourage parents to try to help their child develop intrinsic motivation.
Okay, thanks for sharing. So both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation are useful, but I guess intrinsic motivation is more effective and also has a more lasting impact in the long run. Yeah, so how about you, Soba?
Exactly. So I'm also a firm believer of intrinsic motivation, like doing something because you truly want it and enjoy it, and this is true motivation because only this would be permanent, you see. However, having said that, extrinsic motivation does have a place. However, like for example, like what the other two speakers have mentioned, material awards and rewards, or it could also be praises. So sometimes for younger children, we give them a lot of praises so that we're hoping that this would, we can do that, but and so that this would move towards intrinsic motivation and not just end there. However, just a word of caution, I feel that too much praise, for example, only leads the child to growing up to think that others must always recognize them in order to feel that they have achieved something. Uh, but instead, I think it's important that they realize that they need to feel good from within just due to their own achievement and not because of what someone says or doesn't say or does or doesn't do. You see, so because we know that in life and in their lives later, they may not always get the recognition that they are looking out for. So they have to be happy for themselves, and the feel good character must come from within, and that is can only happen if they have intrinsic motivation. So yeah, and anything, any other recognition would just be a bonus. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, I see. So extrinsic motivation can be used to work towards intrinsic motivation, but ultimately intrinsic motivation is still the ideal, right?
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking through the Facebook comments, and we have a comment from Iris where she says that she plays board games together with her children, I guess that means. Yeah.
Yeah, actually playing together is an excellent way to bond with your kids. Yeah, especially for children who don't wish to talk too much, right? Yeah.
So actually, we have another question coming in from a parent. So how do you make the child feel less stressed and yet they're still able to achieve their capabilities? Yeah, Soba, you want to take this first?
Sure. I think, like I said earlier, I think giving them the emotional support is good, and I think communicating to them, that while we just want you to do your best, and we're not expecting sterling grades here. We just want you to do your best, and it's important for you to take this seriously and for you to do your best. However, we are there to give them the emotional support, and if they feel down, I think we will have to be there physically, to help them and to constantly check on them. Actually, just being there physically, at night when they're studying, to come out and say, hey, do you want a drink or something like that. I mean, I think very, very simple gestures actually touch the heart. So just to let them know that, I'm not just concerned about your studies, I'm actually concerned about you as a whole, which we all parents are, but we may not always communicate that way or behave in that way, especially during exam time. So I think that might be helpful. Yeah, if that helps.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Shobha. How about you, Nora? Do you have anything to say?
I think for me, it would be more of during the target setting or the goal setting stage. I think it's important for the parent to have conversations with the child to assess where exactly the child is at that particular level. And then you set targets or goals that are appropriate, they are measurable, and they must be very specific. So it cannot be very vague, like, oh, I want to achieve a B3, say, for example, at the O levels for a certain subject. It would be helpful if you can put a particular percentage to that, and then come up with a proper plan. So anything that helps the child to see and to celebrate small successes along the way. So let's say the child is weak in a particular topic, and that topic is going to be assessed in a particular test. So we say, okay, so we're going to try to aim for this, and in order to aim for this, you need to take these couple of steps. Then you have a checklist of some sorts. So it's more of like physical things that you can do with a kid, so that as we go along, if the child has achieved that particular goal, then he feels good about himself, right? So it's the small success that we're celebrating at that point in time, and then you move on to larger goals, higher targets. Yeah, so that would help the child to achieve his or her capabilities, but the stress is very managed. We don't suddenly, if the child comes back with a C6 in a particular subject at the mid-year exams, and then you say, oh no, by the prelims, you guys got to move this up, you have to move this up to an A1. I think that it will be counterproductive, and it's not good for anybody at all. Yeah, so that would be what I would think might work.
Setting realistic expectations, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is something you mentioned previously too, like setting realistic expectations and then knowing your child well enough to know how much to expect them to perform. Yeah. I'll repeat the question one more time for Nixon. So
Sure.
how can you make the child feel less stressed, yet they're still able to achieve their capabilities?
I share the same sentiments as Nora. To begin with, it was actually happened to my daughter, Shannon. So when she came back with C5 or 6, I do remember quite clearly. So then we talk about it, and then we try to analyze what is the situation that she's facing. And then we try to set target that is not impossible to get. For example, from C5 or C6 all the way to A1. So the child will feel extremely stressed when you have this such a big jump. So I'll just maybe just give her a little bit more advice to look at the weaknesses. Then let's try to achieve a B4 or a B3, and gradually you push up the level so that the child will not feel too stressful. If the child will have to then perform from a C5 all the way to A1 in such a short span of time. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing. So for those watching the live from home today, if you have any questions or any more comments, you can just leave them in the comments. Then our guests can respond to them. Yeah. So we can give the viewers some takeaway, right? I'll be asking one question. So if you had to summarize, how would you support your children during exam season? So what kind of advice would you give to the viewers for today? So yeah, just a very short summary of how would you support your child during exam season? Yeah. Nora, you want to go first?
I would say be there. Just be there for them. Sometimes you don't have to speak. It's just the physical presence is good enough.
Okay. Yeah, I think you mentioned that earlier too.
Yeah.
That you try to make your daughter feel like you'll always be there for her no matter what.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Soba, how about you?
Yeah, just to add on to that also, to just know your child and customize your help, in that way that will best suit them. Yeah.
How about you, Nixon?
Same, I'll be there to help them, to give them the moral support and hear from them and let them pour out whatever they like to express about their thoughts and feelings. So then you can go deeper and help them to support them more.
Okay, so I guess to all our viewers for today, to summarize, the most important advice would be to be there for your child. Yeah, so you have to give them moral support to let them know that you will always be there for them. I think that's pretty important. Like for me as someone who's still studying, yeah, I would really appreciate if my parents can be there for me too, and they are there for me. So I really appreciate that. Yeah,
that's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Nice to know,
Parenting
Kelly.
is hard work, Doesn't just come like that.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
And there's no 10-year series.
Look at our hair all turned grey already.
Yeah.
Just for you all. Yeah.
So besides being there for your child, there's also you have to know your child well enough to suit your needs and to change your needs according to what your child is performing as.
Yeah.
Okay.
Know your child, really know your child. I don't think there's actually one size fit all kind of thing. Yeah. So we can hear from what different people say and then we see which one suits our child the best. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you all for sharing today. That's all we have for today. And yeah, so thank you, Nixon, Shoba, and Nora for coming on our live today and sharing your experiences. So I think that we have seen that for all you three, from the PSLE to O levels to even A levels, you have learned that exams aren't the be all and end all. And one of the best ways of supporting your child is to give them room to grow and also be independent while, of course, being there for them. Yeah, so all in all, dealing with exam stress for kids is knowing what your child needs. And of course, having said that, exams are, of course, very stressful for the parents. But as parents, it's all about managing your expectations and then trying to help your child become the best that they can be. So to all our viewers, I hope that your questions have been answered. And for those who have won a prize, just make sure to get in touch with us through direct message on Facebook, and then my colleague will get back to you. Yeah, you can also share about how you've enjoyed today's session or any suggestions or topics you want to see covered in future. Yeah, or you can just drop us a message on our social media pages on Instagram or Facebook. So thank you all. We'll still stick around for a while if any of you have any other questions. Yeah,
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shoba, and thank you, Nora.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
To stick around if you have any questions, you can just put them in the chat and then we'll get to you soon.
Been a cool night nowadays, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Thank God, after so long.
Do you want to say thank you for the live today? Yeah, thank you, Jimon, for watching.
Thank you, Jimon.
Yeah. So maybe do you three want to share what it was like for you when you went through your big exams like PSLE O levels?
Too long ago.
I remember my PSLE much.
Yeah,
O
yeah.
levels, it wasn't very stressful. For me, A levels was the most stressful, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
was the killer. Yeah, I mean, I think that the time when I experienced the most stress.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
You want to
Within 2
share
years.
more?
Yeah, within 2 years, you cram everything. I don't know. I
Uh-huh.
mean, it was quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like O levels at all, I
Mm.
thought. Yeah, so I mean, that would have been my most stressful student year, I think, the A level year, or even for the matter, the 2 years.
Yeah, it's about a year and a half before you already have to sit for
Isn't
another
it? Oh yeah,
national
you're right.
exam.
Actually, it's not
Yeah,
even a
that's
full.
right.
I
So
see.
the memory of the O levels
Mhm.
would still be very fresh, and then suddenly you're faced with this thing called the A levels.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have enough time to recover.
Yeah.
And it's just
Quite
two
Mm.
very-
years, right? I mean, you don't
yeah.
even have enough time to spend, with your friends, and then
Getting to
like,
know
oh,
your
boom, boom,
friends.
we are going for exam. Okay, bye.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but university was a lot better, I thought.
Mm.
It was. I don't know. How was it for you, Nora?
It was good. I spent 3 years in the NTU. And yeah, although the modular system does not really allow you to get to know people very well, and I did not live in the hostel I didn't stay in the hostel at that point in time. Nonetheless, I still enjoyed my time spent there. It's a whole new topic actually. I have a Bachelor of Accountancy, which is very far away from teaching of English. Yeah, so that was a very good experience, I would say.
Mm.
Mm.
Kelly, how about you though? You are still in
Yeah.
studying, right? Yeah.
Yeah, actually I had my A levels just around 3 years ago. I remember, yeah, it was quite a stressful period of time compared to, PSLE, O levels and so on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it
What
was
was
really
it?
quite tight.
Yeah.
Mm. Oh, actually, we have a question from
Yeah,
Kelly
we
Chan.
do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she says, she says, I missed the answer on how to monitor the far and wide language arts in IP Sec 3. So I think to rephrase her question, I think she's asking, how do you keep track of the various novels or Shakespeare texts going forward to upper Sec IP? Yeah, so I think this is more of a English language question. So maybe Soba, you can take it first.
I can. But Kelly, you did IP as well, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Do you want to say something first, and then I can chip in?
For me, I wasn't a literature student, so I didn't do much of like Shakespeare. Yeah, I only did like just one work of Shakespeare. And I think what my teacher did is that we all went through the text kind of one by one. So in a very nice structure, so it wasn't too complicated. Yeah, and then what my teacher did is that she went through each sentence one by one so that, because they don't use modern English in Shakespeare's works. Yeah, so she explained each one very clearly for all of us to understand. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be helpful, right?
Mm.
I think we need to try to get some notes on it as well. I think some schools do provide, but I do understand some schools don't. So I think getting your hand on it, if your child is having some difficulty, that would be good, so that you can understand what it is, and to follow it better. So I think that's something that you can try. Yeah. And other than that, I think it's just to read. Like for my son, I think he just reads them, over and over, maybe, so that you actually get the hang of it, and you actually keep track of what the language is like, and how do you especially how you answer the exam questions, how do you respond, so I think that might be something you can consider. Yeah.
Wait, for me, just to add on a little bit, I
Yeah.
remember back when I was in secondary school doing like Shakespeare text, we actually did Google a lot of the times, and there are actually quite some helpful websites online where they actually explain all the text to you very clearly in like modern English. So I think if you're a parent and you want to help your kid who is going to upper Sec IP and doing literature, yeah, you can try Googling, and I'm sure a lot of websites will come up
Google
with
to the rescue,
very very simplified explanations. Yeah, so Nora, do you have any advice to give?
I've never taught literature before, but from what I hear from my colleagues who do within the same department, I think, like what Shobha said earlier, the notes would be very important. And unfortunately, the different schools, I think, use different texts. So if you could find out from your friends or from your child's friends which other schools are actually doing the same novels or the same texts, and to get notes from those schools, and of course you exchange notes, I think that might be quite helpful. So I understand the difficulty where literature is concerned, because even though there are students who are taking it across the different schools, the texts may not necessarily be the same. So it would be very difficult to get resources in the form of notes as well as exam papers, past year exam papers. Yeah. And I think they also change the texts every 2-3 years, I believe. It's on a rotational basis. There is this list that is given out, and the schools are free to choose which are the texts that they want to take for the students to study. Yeah, I also agree with Soba. I think the child needs to know the novel very well, inside out, because then it becomes a whole lot easier to actually analyze the examination question and then answer to the question.
Nixon, do your children happen to be taking literature?
Yes, I have. I think Keisha, Shannon, they do lead as well. But to some, because I'm not language trained, so I probably could not give you any comment over for this question.
Yeah, no problem. There's actually another question, a follow-up question from Kelly Chan. So she wants to know if is there any way she can find such notes, like any sources, any links that she can go to find these notes to help her kid with literature?
I think actually, if you Google, I've actually done that before. Actually, when you Google it, you can chance upon sometimes on some of the notes. Surprisingly, very detailed ones. But of course, it may not be for all texts. And I think like what Nora mentioned before. I mean, it would be good to know. I mean, to ask around friends of children in other schools and see whether they are also having the same text, and see if they have notes as well. I mean, to cross check even, would be a good idea. Yeah, so maybe you would like to try these 2 ways and see how that goes for you.
Nora, do you have anything else to add?
I think probably if you want to search online, maybe just key in something as generic as notes on Macbeth, notes on Romeo and Juliet, and you see what comes up. Yeah, sometimes the fewer words you put in, right, the more you get. And then of course you have to be very discerning as to which website you would want to trust. And the critical thing is you must know what the school has taught or has covered. Yeah, because then otherwise you will veer off course, and then that's not necessarily good for the child.
Okay. So at the moment, Nixon, if you have nothing to add, yeah, so we can just wait to see if there are any more questions coming in. So if there's anyone still sticking around, you can just leave your questions in the comments, and then we'll get back to you soon. Yeah, so in the meantime, since we're talking about English language and literature, would you say there's any, like big difference between what a teacher would teach when it comes to English language versus English literature? Nora, you want to take this first, since you're an English language teacher?
Yeah, I think there is a misconception that English language and English literature are one and the same. There's also a misconception that if you're good in English, then automatically you will excel in lit. They are two very different subjects with very different demands, papers, requirements, answering techniques and skills. And we have seen in school students who are very good in lit but can't quite do well in English, and vice versa. Yeah, so whilst very extensive knowledge or strong proficiency in the English language does help in doing well in literature, it's not the only criteria. I think for lit, they still need to study the text, they need to know it very well, they need to be able to dissect a poem, and then write down their interpretations and so on and so forth. So the ability to express themselves clearly would come from the language proficiency side, but the study skills are really strictly lit related, I would feel.
Okay, Soba, would you like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think also for lit, I think there are various aspects, right? For literature, there's not just prose, but there's also like poems. So I think many students I know, I think they may be quite good at the prose section, but prose meaning like the story, the story itself, analyzing a story per se. However, when it comes to poems, they are quite puzzled, and they're like, oh, okay, what does this mean? And they often have little interest in it. So that's why I think there are many different types, right? So of many different areas of literature as well. So you may excel in one area, but you may not be so good in another. And again, like what Nora actually rightly pointed out, English language and literature are very different. English language is a lot of mechanics as grammar and vocabulary. But when it comes to literature, there is a level of depth it's a comprehension level that we talk about, the depth of analysis that we go into. So they can be vastly different in that sense. But of course, good language helps certainly, not just for literature, but also for other subjects like history and geography and what have you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Kelly Chan says exactly, and she says that she'll be more diligent. Yeah. So thanks, Kelly, for your comments and questions.
Most welcome, Kelly.
Maybe I can ask one more question. So, since today's session is about how parents can support their children during exam season. And then, I Love Reading publishes English magazines. So in this case, do you guys have any advice on how parents can help their children during exam season for English papers? Yeah, so Nora, do you want to go first?
I think there's a common misconception also amongst many people that there is nothing to study for English. I would really like to debunk that myth or otherwise, because if there is really nothing to study for English, then the entire English department should not exist, right? We should just, set the papers and then administer it, and and we are all just paper setters as well as markers. Now, I think, and also there's another misconception I feel that reading alone is going to help the child to improve significantly in English. So often I will ask my students, if it's just reading alone, then would it be like what, comics, or manga, or what do you read exactly? If you plow through the newspapers safely and religiously every day, suddenly does it ensure that you will get an A1? So I think that where English exams are concerned, consistency is key. So the child cannot start preparing for the English exam a month before the actual papers. And I say a month because for most subjects, I think 2 weeks, 3 weeks might be sufficient because they're content-based subjects. I think the regularity of the contact that the child has with the language is very important. So I always tell my students 10 to 15 minutes per day. You read something. It could be a short article, and they're very blessed now, right? Because this is a digital age. So they can download articles from CNA, Straits Times. They can keep it on their phones, and on their way to school or on their way back, when they're chilling out, instead of playing a game, they could just take out an article and read it. And then that's it for the day. And, take note of sentence structures, certain new words. And if they do this every day, you will realize that in 6 days, they actually get an hour of English. Yeah, be it reading or be it learning new words and so on and so forth. And they can actually take a rest day on the 7th day, and then the cycle starts again. Then it is not so onerous on the child. And then when they go to school, usually schools have about 3 to 3.5 hours worth of English lessons. Then the teachers will teach the exam skills. Then if they have already the content through their own reading efforts, their structured reading efforts, they will find it a whole lot easier to follow what the teacher is saying in class. So that is complementary. Yeah. And then of course, if they really feel that they need help, then tuition is the way to go. But if the child attends tuition just for the sake of attending tuition and the child is tired, I feel that it is counterproductive. So that's why I say the intrinsic motivation, the want to learn, I think that should work for this in this particular instance. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing. So maybe Nixon, from the perspective of someone who is an educational magazine publisher, do you think something like encouraging your children to read will be more helpful for them in terms of studying for English language exams? Is that what you encourage your girls to do?
I think that serves as a fundamental, and then the rest will add on skills like writing, speaking, the oral skills, and the representing skills as well. Yeah. So it's builds up along the way.
Thanks for sharing. How about you, Soba?
Yeah, so, I mean, I would agree with Nora and Nixon as well. And I think like when it comes to language, you use it, else you lose it, in that sense. And I think that is exactly why I Love Reading exists also, because our magazines are also, our articles are, they are not like very long in that sense. Every article is just about 2 pages long, and I think this is a great read. If they're on the train, can just flip around. And I think just like Nora mentioned, this would, take up 10 minutes or 15 minutes, of their time, maybe reading 1 or 2 articles. And I think this is an excellent way, because our articles in the magazines also are model essays. So I think, subconsciously, they actually understand how the essay is structured, and, how the choice of words are used, So I think it's very subconscious in that way, and and that is sometimes the best way to learn, instead of like telling them, when they often don't want to listen. So I think reading would be excellent, and I think if we can do one thing for a child, it is to encourage him or her to read, and to pick up good materials. And I believe that our magazines would be something that the children can try at the different levels. Yeah, at I or Inspire or I Think magazines, depending on the age group. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I guess reading is very important. And yeah, it's true that I Love Reading's magazines are quite suitable because we do have quite a wide range for different ages. So like lower primary, upper primary, lower sec, upper sec. Yeah, so our magazines can help to help children prepare for English language exams as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you all for sharing. So if you have no more questions from the viewers, I think we can end this Facebook Live. Yeah, so thank you all for coming today.
Thank you,
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you,
night,
Shoba,
everyone.
again. Thank you,
Bye.
Nora.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Good
night.
night, all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.